In 1983, the Doctor Who production team introduced a new companion to the TARDIS crew, Vizsla Turlough, or just Turlough for short. His arrival continued the youthful dynamic of the Fifth Doctor era, filling the void left by Adric, who had been killed off in Season 19's Earthshock. Like his predecessor, Turlough had this rebellious streak and often felt like an outsider amongst his fellow companions. However, what set Turlough apart from previous companions was his introduction. He didn't join the Doctor out of curiosity or a desire for adventure, or even due to being orphaned. Instead, he was coerced into an offer he couldn't refuse, striking a deal with the Black Guardian, who tasked him with assassinating the Doctor in exchange for his freedom. Turlough's arrival was structured around a three-story arc in Season 20, charting his transformation from a reluctant assassin to a fully fledged companion. This trilogy aligned with the broader theme of Season 20, which saw the return of several classic antagonists, including Omega, the Mara, and the Master, reflecting producer John Nathan Turner's nostalgic approach to the Doctor Who's 20th anniversary. The season ultimately led to the Five Doctors, broadcasting 8 months later. However, unlike the other villainous returns in Season 20, the Black Guardian's influence was spread across multiple stories, forming a continuous character-driven arc rather than a one-off appearance. This structure allowed other threats to take centre stage, whilst also providing room for Turlough's development. So let's take a closer look at how the Turlough Trilogy introduced one of Doctor Who's most unique companions. The trilogy begins with Mawdryn Undead, a story that introduces Turlough to the world of Doctor Who and wastes no time in establishing his multifaceted character. Within the first 10 minutes, we're presented with this first layer, an arrogant, rebellious student at a private school. Turlough coerces his nervous classmate Ibbotson into a joyride in a vintage car, which he subsequently crashes. While unconscious, he experiences a surreal vision in which the Black Guardian appears and makes a tempting offer. It's here we learn that Turlough is no ordinary schoolboy. He's actually an alien stranded on Earth, bored, frustrated, and desperate to escape. The Black Guardian offers him a way out, but only if he agrees to kill the Doctor. Turlough, clearly reluctant but driven by desperation, accepts the deal. From that point on, the Black Guardian manipulates events from the shadows, guiding Turlough towards the Doctor. When they finally cross paths, Turlough is handed an early opportunity to fulfill his mission, but fails. Slowly, he begins to realise that the Doctor may not be the evil force the Black Guardian claims. Yet, Turlough remains caught in a trap, bound to the Black Guardian's will, whilst trying to hide his true allegiance from the Doctor, Tegan, and Nyssa. Meanwhile, the Doctor and his two companions are drawn into the story when the TARDIS nearly collides with a seemingly abandoned spaceship, connected via transmat to Earth, specifically near Turlough School in 1983. The Doctor finds an old friend there, the Brigadier, now working as a teacher, but oddly suffering from amnesia and unable to recall the Doctor at all. At the same time, Tegan and Nyssa arrive at the school, albeit 6 years earlier, when they meet a younger version of the Brigadier, who does remember the Doctor, and also encounter Mawdryn, a mutated scientist that they mistake for an injured Doctor. Mawdryn and his fellow scientists were victims of a failed experiment in immortality. Now trapped in a living death, they seek the Doctor's help to end their suffering by forcing him to give up his remaining regenerations. As a result, Mawdryn serves a different type of antagonist, not a conqueror or a villain, but a tragic figure who simply wants to die. While the timey-wimey structure of the plot and the dual brigadiers might seem complicated, writer Peter Grimwade smartly paces the story. The first half focuses on Turlough's pact with the Black Guardian and the Brigadier's memory loss, leaving Mawdryn's arc to come into focus later. This structure allows Turlough's character to breathe. Turlough would seemingly struggle to gain trust of anyone. The Black Guardian quickly questions his ability to become an assassin. The Brigadier sees him as a troublemaker, and Tegan and Nyssa question his actions. Even the Doctor, albeit sympathetic, seems suspicious. He picks up on Turlough's unusual knowledge of alien technology, but rather than confront him, the Doctor opts to bring him on board the TARDIS, perhaps seeing something of his younger self in Turlough, or simply intrigued enough to keep him close. This decision sets the stage for the rest of the trilogy. Interestingly, while Mawdryn is ostensibly the villain of the piece, it's the Black Guardian who provides the real sense of danger, even though no one but Turlough is aware of his presence. That contrast between the tragic, dying Mawdryn and the manipulative, otherworldly Black Guardian creates a unique dual antagonist setup. The return of the Brigadier is also a highlight. Though originally the role was intended for Ian Chesterton, whose background as a schoolteacher would have been a perfect fit, actor William Russell was unavailable. Fortunately, Nicholas Courtney slips back into the role of the Brigadier effortlessly. His history of the Doctor, especially his familiarity with regeneration, adds further weight to the narrative and ties the story into the show's legacy. Ultimately, Mawdryn Undead is a solid story, one that plays with time travel, memory, and immortality, even if some of its conclusions are predictable and a fair bit of running through corridors fills out the runtime. What elevates it, however, is the layered introduction of Turlough. His inner conflict, secret alliance, and attempt to balance survival with morality gives this story an emotional core and opens up intriguing questions for the episodes yet to come. The second story in the trilogy is Terminus, which in my opinion is the weak link of the three and feels somewhat out of place. In terms of progressing Turlough's storyline, it offers very little. His involvement in the overall narrative is minimal, as the main focus is on the departure of fellow companion Nyssa. However, the story does begin with Turlough. Still under the Black Guardian's influence, he sabotages the TARDIS. This causes the ship to begin breaking up, and as a result, Nyssa becomes separated from the others and finds herself on board a plague ship that the TARDIS has latched onto as an emergency measure. Eventually, the rest of the TARDIS crew also end up on the plague ship. The Doctor crosses paths with two abandoned space pirates, Carrie and Olvia, whilst Turlough and Tegan end up lost in the bowels of the vessel. The ship is on autopilot, transporting its crew of laser plague carriers to a destination called Terminus, where they are supposedly to be cured, but in reality, they are just left to die. Meanwhile, Nyssa has become infected. As the Doctor and Carrie investigate, they discover that Terminus previously jettisoned some unstable fuel, which exploded and caused the Big Bang. The Doctor now has to prevent this from happening again, although this time with potentially catastrophic consequences. Ultimately, Nyssa discovers that radiation can cure the laser disease. She decides to stay behind to help the Vanir, the enslaved workers who run Terminus, with the help of the dog-like creature called the Garm, and transform the facility into a fully functioning hospital. She also aims to free the Vanir from their corporate control by helping them create a synthetic version of Hydromel, the drug they're dependent on. And that's basically the story of Terminus. I find it's a slow, plodding narrative, though it does touch on some heavy adult themes like disease, forced labour, and addiction. The problem is that the plot takes far too long to get going. The characters, both the space pirates and the Vanir, aren't particularly memorable, and the story lacks a strong visual antagonist. Yes, the Black Guardian remains the overarching villain of the trilogy, but here he barely appears, only popping up to remind Turlough what a bad job he's doing trying to kill the Doctor, and they only share a couple of brief scenes together. That said, there is a small upside. With Turlough separated from the main plot, he spends almost the entire story with Tegan, which gives him a chance to start earning her trust. It's a welcome development for his character, even if it's understated. Ultimately, Terminus feels forgettable and offers very little to the overall story arc. It gives Nyssa a noble exit, but the story feels like it may have been written before Turlough was even introduced, then hastily adapted to fit him in. Honestly, it could have worked better as a standalone tale placed before Mawdryn Undead. A more focused approach could have given Nyssa a stronger farewell and let the trilogy stay on track. As it stands, Terminus just leaves you more concerned than excited about where the trilogy and Turlough's dilemma is ultimately heading. There's the old saying, save the best until last. And in the case of the Turlough Trilogy, that couldn't be more true. The final story, Enlightenment, is easily the strongest of the three. It features an imaginative plot, striking visuals, and finally gives us more direct involvement from not only the Black Guardian, but his opposite counterpart, the White Guardian. It's colourful, creative, and full of intriguing characters. With Nyssa having departed in Terminus, Enlightenment allows more screen time for the remaining companions, Turlough and Tegan, as well as more interactions between all three leads. By now, Turlough's character has progressed. He no longer wants to kill the Doctor, and seems to be settling on life on board the TARDIS. He also begins to form a warmer friendship with Tegan. However, he's still hiding the truth about his pact with the Black Guardian, and his secretive behaviour means the Doctor continued to suspect there's more to him than meets the eye. The story opens with the TARDIS losing power, which turns out to be an attempt from the White Guardian. He tries to deliver coordinates to the Doctor, but the message is interrupted when Turlough cuts the power, claiming the TARDIS was about to explode. The trio land on board what they believe to be an Edwardian sailing yacht. The Doctor decides to explore it with Turlough, trusting Tegan more to remain behind and wait for another message from the White Guardian. On the ship, the Doctor and Turlough meet a human crew who suffer from memory loss and seem oddly unaware of how they ended up on the yacht. The officers, meanwhile, behave more strangely. The Doctor soon realizes they're not on a yacht at all. It's actually a spaceship disguised as one. The officers are actually Eternals, immortal beings who feed on the thoughts of mortals, in this case a human crew who have been plucked out of time. The ship is one of several racing through space, each resembling a historical sailing vessel from Earth's past. The Eternals are using these races as a way to distract themselves from the crushing boredom of life, and the ultimate prize they all seek is enlightenment. Among the competitors is a pirate galleon captained by the flamboyant Rack, who is sabotaging her rivals with the help from the Black Guardian. As mentioned earlier, Turlough is trying to prove his loyalty to the Doctor, but his actions throughout the story make us still question whether he's truly trustworthy or if he's playing a deeper game. Is he naturally duplicitous, or is he misleading the villains in order to expose them? The Black Guardian by this point has lost patience with Turlough and is now actively trying to destroy the Doctor with Rack's help. When Turlough realizes the nature of their alliance, he pretends to side with them, appearing to betray the Doctor in order to win the race. Eventually, Rack is defeated thanks to the Doctor, and with Turlough's help, her partnership with the Black Guardian is exposed. When the race ends, both Guardians appear to offer the prize of enlightenment to Turlough, on the condition that he turns the Doctor over to the Black Guardian. Instead, Turlough rejects the offer and hurls the enlightenment crystal at the Black Guardian, breaking their pact and ultimately proving where his loyalties lie. Enlightenment stands out as one of the most imaginative stories in all of classic Doctor Who. The twist that the ships are actually spacecraft is a fantastic reveal. The period set design fused with sci-fi technology creates a unique and memorable atmosphere. Writer Barbara Clegg, the first woman to write a Doctor Who serial, delivers a story full of rich ideas and strong characters. Linda Barron's Rack is a wonderfully theatrical villain, played intentionally over the top, which contrasts brilliantly with Keith Barron's stern, composed performance as Captain Stryker. Interestingly, the two actors never actually share a scene, yet their characters still feel like opposing forces. Tegan also gets a small subplot of her own, as Stryker's second-in-command, Mariner, develops an odd obsession with her. As an Eternal, he doesn't understand emotions like love or affection, which makes the situation feel both awkward and slightly unsettling. Ultimately, Enlightenment's originality, charm, and striking imagery rescue the trilogy from mediocrity. It provides a satisfying and meaningful conclusion to Turlough's introduction, showing him reject the darkness and join the Doctor not as a reluctant saboteur, but as a true companion, and his path to redemption is complete for now. Turlough would remain a companion until the Fifth Doctor's penultimate story, Planet of Fire, in which his narrative comes full circle. It is revealed that his exile on Earth was due to him fleeing a war on his home planet, and he is eventually reunited with his people. As for the stories in between, Turlough settles into the role of a regular companion, albeit one with a clear disdain for Earth and frequent frustration with human behaviour. Still, he shares the Doctor's curiosity and sense of adventure. His tendency to wander off and become separated from the Doctor and Tegan happens often, but when isolated, he consistently shows bravery and a willingness to side with the oppressed. With much of his character explored in the trilogy of stories we just covered, and his arc rounded off in Planet of Fire, there isn't a great deal of further development. The Doctor's lingering mistrust of him casts a subtle shadow over Turlough's legacy, as does the ambiguity around his motives early on. One of the only later moments that delves deeper into his character comes in Frontiers, when Turlough suffers from a form of PTSD upon encountering the Detractors, monsters he has faced once before. Turlough also marks something of an end of an era in classic Doctor Who, as he was the last male companion to regularly travel with the Doctor. After his departure, the Doctor would journey on with just one companion at a time. I wouldn't place Turlough at the very top of the list of Doctor Who companions, but he remains one of the most interesting additions to the show's history. whose unique introduction and transformation from would-be assassin to trusted companion is a refreshing take. Traditionally, male companions in Doctor Who have often struggled to find a strong narrative role compared to their female counterparts. Their self-reliance and bravado often means that they don't need rescuing, and sometimes end up rescuing the Doctor or the fellow companion instead. Turlough defies that blueprint, though. His morally conflicted background and outsider status offering something new and compelling. That said, it's a little disappointing that following the trilogy, much of his potential feels spent. He rarely receives significant subplot development or deeper narrative involvement up until his eventual departure. That's not a criticism of actor Mark Strickson, whose performance brought a fascinating edge to the character. After leaving Doctor Who, Strickson transitioned to a successful career behind the camera as a director and producer of wildlife documentaries. He relocated to Australia and New Zealand and played a key role in bringing Steve Irwin to the public attention through his work on The Crocodile Hunter. So, Vizsla Turlough, an interesting, unique take on the Doctor Who companion, or a character whose striking introduction masked a lack of long-term development? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. For now, it's the end that the moment has been prepared for.